Okay, I took a break because the montage that you just watched, I was trying to do the math for a hat pattern that's coming out at the end of this month. And I don't know if my brain is just like off today, but the math was not mathing. And it was matching up for one size, but then the other size wasn't working. So it was actually matching up for two sizes. And the third size, I was like, why is this math not mathing? So anyway, so I've paused that. I've taken a break, and I'm actually going to cast on for a new design that's not even gonna come out for a couple of weeks, maybe even months. But I need a break from math, so I'm gonna go cast on something else because the math for this one, thankfully, is already done. Like the pattern's already written and everything. So I think it'd be nice to give my brain a break and work on something that is like finished. And that way I can just enjoy the knitting part of it. So I'm gonna grab some needles and my yarn and let's go cast on. I've grabbed my yarn and a coffee. Let's get casting on. I might voice over this once I put it in production. But does anyone else find it like incredibly hard sometimes to find the center pole? Like I get it, there are all these gadgets now that, you know, make it easier to knit from the outside strand of the yarn. I'm a center pole girly. I'll always be a center pole girly. I like when I pull from the center and the yarn ball stays where I put it. To be clear, I'm not knocking the new gadgets that are on the market now. It's just, they weren't around when I started knitting. I think everyone just finds their process, much like how I'm not finding the center of this skein. Wow, this is really in there. I'm wondering now if I should wind this up into a cake instead. Well, I found the center pole. Unfortunately, this chunk of yarn barf came out with it. It's fine, I'll figure it out. Aha, here's the actual center pole. Now, risky game. Do I pull from this and just lay this piece on top of the ball? That kind of sounds like a plan. Speaking of every knitter finding their own way of doing things, I have been measuring yarn for cast-ons the same way my whole life, ever since I learned how to measure cast-ons. Don't take this as gospel because I don't know if it works for everyone. But when I know I'm going to be roughly casting on 100-ish stitches, I just extend my arm, hold the yarn tail in one hand, and then I go all the way to my shoulder. And wherever I get at my shoulder is pretty much 100 stitches-ish. I give or take, depending on the yarn weight, a little bit extra. And then I just make my slip knot and cast on. I really had no idea what I was going to talk about when I sat down to do this, which is why a voiceover might be coming, so you might not be even hearing this. But if editor me decides not to voice over this section, let's talk about books for a second. I am in one of the worst reading years in recent years. Last year was rough. I was dealing with a tiny health crisis, but I'm fine now. So I wasn't doing a whole lot of reading then, and I think that's still affecting me into this year because I've not been reading at the rate I used to be reading at. I remember I was reading between 45 and 50-ish books for a few years there. And then 2025, I did not read practically anything. I think I read a total of maybe 20 books, which I know is still higher than the average person reads. But for those of us who, you know, consider themselves to be bookworms, it's quite a significant drop. This year, I think I pledged 60 books on Goodreads, and I have read, I think, 5. And we're in April, people, so I gotta step it up. I need to check out some books from my local library because they actually have quite a decent amount of books that I want to read. I just have to put a few of them on hold, and I never remember until I'm in the library that I'm like, oh, dang, I need to put that on hold. For reference, they are interlibrary books, so they're not at a specific branch. I think that my trick might run me short this time. Of course, the one time I do it on camera, I'm betrayed. For now, I'm just going to keep casting on. I'm going to stop and count in a second and see if I'm close to my cast on. I actually don't even know what my cast on is supposed to be. Yes, this is my own pattern. Will I get up and go look at the pattern I've written? No. Okay, I got concerned that I wasn't going to have enough to finish my cast on. So I did start the cast on all over again and recast on everything. Looking at it now, I think I probably had enough of a tail initially to cast on the whole thing. but I got scared. So now I just have 4 stitches left to cast on, and then we can start. This is fun. This is great yarn. If anyone's curious, it is Cascade Yarns, the 220 Superwash. Oh, and I'm putting my stitch marker on. Isn't this so freaking cute? If you're curious where this is from, whoa, what happened to my lighting? Okay, sorry if the camera's different. I don't know what happened. My whole screen was like dark and it wasn't wanting to pick up. The sun is gone by now. It's April. Aren't we supposed to have the sun until like 8 o'clock? Anyway, back to what I was saying. This croissant stitch marker, super cute. I used to sell these. I used to sell stitch markers on Etsy back in the day. I've not done that in a hot minute. I do still have some inventory from back when I used to sell. Kind of sounds like thunder outside. Anyway, what was I saying? Oh yeah, I used to sell stitch markers back in the day. I still have some inventory from back then that I may or may not one day randomly just pop up somewhere. Honestly, I gift a lot of it to knitting friends. Would you believe that I did the cast on completely wrong? After blagging on about it, I just realized that I meant to do a provisional cast on instead of a long tail cast on. Let's do it again. I used to get more frustrated when I would have to restart things like this, especially because it's very easy to be like, oh, it's just the cast on. Like, why didn't I remember? Honestly, life is way too hot already to beat myself up over just forgetting about a cast on. I've only been recording about 10 minutes, so realistically, that's not that much time to have to redo this. I'm doing a crocheted provisional cast on, by the way. I don't know if someone's come up with a new way of doing this, but I always just cast on directly onto the needle. Speaking of new ways of doing things, I see tutorials all the time on like TikTok and Instagram, and it's so fascinating to me to see everybody just sharing how they do things, because that was not the way it was when I started knitting. For reference, I started knitting in 2011. We had the internet, but it was not the internet of today. Sometimes I feel like technology is advancing at such a fast rate that it's impossible to keep up. And sometimes it feels like we're not meant to keep up. It is fun though to watch things grow from nothing into something. And I think spaces like TikTok and Instagram are so important for communities like this one, because you really don't know who you're going to meet or what you're going to learn to do or what you're going to be inspired by. That's one of the bright spots of social media at a time when things can be so bad on social media and it's hard to distinguish between what's real and what's just fake posts and bot accounts. It is nice to have that sense of community. And then I think back to what the knitting community was like before I even entered it, like before technology advanced to the point of places like Ravelry or Instagram or anywhere where you could connect with your community, really. I think about what it was like in like the 80s and the 90s and how your knitting circle really was just the people around you. And maybe, you know, someone that had been there before that moved away, but realistically, maybe the people you saw the most with the craft were the people that were in your neck of the woods. And even back to before the 70s and 80s, like, or I think I originally said the 80s and the 90s. Basically, in a time before I was alive, it's just very interesting to think about how knitters got to know each other and what that community looked like. And, you know, I know a lot of people learned from their parents or from their grandparents, and just those tiny communities without having access to the internet, and yet the craft flourished in these places. So basically, TLDR, I think that the knitting community is a great place, and I think that when used correctly, the internet can only make that place even better. I think that I've cast on the correct amount of stitches. I'm going to count really quickly so I don't have to do this a third time, and then we can get started on row 1. I cast on 2 extra stitches by accident, so I'm just going to drop those 2 right off the needle. I'm just chaining a few stitches right up to the end, then I'll cut that yarn. Whenever I do a provisional cast on, I always tie a knot in the opposite end so that when I'm going to unzip my cast on, I don't accidentally start from the wrong end. Okay, now that I've actually cast on the proper way, I can start knitting. I've been designing a lot more lately than I was previously, and I think that spending more time with my yarn and needles has been taking me away from reading a little bit. And considering I'm having such a rough reading year, I'd love to find a way to combine the two. I know lots of people do, they have like the book open on something. I forget what it's called, like a book stand or something. So I've been looking into one of those. I honestly might try to recreate something out of stuff I have at my home, so I don't buy something that I don't end up liking. I also know I can read on my Kindle for a little hands-free moment there. I know of the existence of audiobooks. I am not living under a rock here. But does anyone else find it difficult to listen to narrated fiction? I find listening to something with someone else's inflections and tones put on it, which is obviously how you want a story to be read, just kind of messes with the narration I have in my head when I'm reading. So when I listen to something, I need it to be monotone and flat. I've had success before with accessibility features on specific e-readers that I've had. So I might dig up my settings again and see if I can't borrow some books from my local library and listen to them on audio using the accessibility features I just mentioned. Well, I thought this whole process was going to take me about 5 minutes and I was going to chat with you guys and then run, but considering I had to redo my cast on, you got to hear a little bit more out of me than I had initially intended. Leave your thoughts in the comments about reading and about how you combine reading with knitting. I'd love to hear anyone's opinions, advice, ideas, etc. We're getting there. I don't know about anyone else, but whenever I do a provisional cast on, I am 10 times more likely to twist my stitches than if I just do an ordinary cast on. So I'm paying very close attention because round 1 you can twist all you want, but round 2, you better make sure it's straight. This wasn't even that many stitches. It's just taking me forever and I'm not sure why. We're in the home stretch. I'm just making sure all my stitches are straight before I start round 2. One of the last projects I knit with the provisional cast on was twisted. So I feel like I'm still living with that trauma. I was about 5 inches in as well, and then I was like, oh no. So I'm trying not to relive that. Okay, time for the croissant to have its little moment, and we're off. Round 2 has been started. No twists. Success. You can see absolutely nothing at this stage. It's just started. It's not Halloween themed though, if anyone was curious. That's just the waist yarn that I had to use for this. Considering, you know, I had to find some waist yarn on the fly. Okay, I'm gonna go and knit some more on this and drink my coffee. And I will check back in at some point if I make progress on this. Good morning, it's the next day. I didn't get a chance to show you the progress that I made last night, so here it is in all its glory. Try not to be too shocked, it's all of like 5 rows. So last night I ended up pretty much just working on this while I rewatched an episode of Psych, and then I just went to bed, which is not bad, but I am hoping to make some more progress today and in the next couple of days, because realistically this won't take me too long. I did also end up working on the infinity scarf last night, which I'm not even sure I spoke about at all in this vlog. I think I showed a clip of me knitting on it, but I don't think I actually spoke about it. It's just a simple infinity scarf. But yeah, I did start the Kitchener stitch last night. I've still got a bunch of stitches on the needles. We're hoping that I left myself a long enough tail to actually Kitchener stitch this whole thing closed. It's been a while since I've done a tube Kitchener. It's not that much harder than a regular one. It just matters the placement of the needles if you've never done one. But yeah, that is the progress that I made. And that brings this casual day in the life style vlog to a close. I hope that you enjoyed it. I hope that it was entertaining. Maybe you got some knitting done. Make sure that you are subscribed if you're interested in seeing more vlogs like this, because honestly, this is fun. Just to throw on the camera and knit for a little bit, talk about some things, and just throw it all together and post. That's fun for me. So if you're interested, make sure that you hit the subscribe button and do comment down below and let me know your thoughts and how you balance reading and knitting, because I feel like I'm in a point in my life where I don't have that great of a balance between the two, and reading is my first love. It was my first hobby. So if you have any ideas or tips for how you balance the two, yeah, go ahead and leave it for me in the comments. I'd love to read it. And hopefully I'll be back soon with another video, maybe in the style of this, maybe in the style of something else. I'm not entirely sure yet. But like I said, that wraps this up. So I'm gonna go work on this design a little bit more, and I'll be back soon with another video. Take care. Happy knitting. Bye.